Thanks, Sandy. That was nice. And thank you for pulling this distinguished panel together, which everybody came back because it's such a riveting topic. Now, I know accreditation, certification standards isn't the sexy topic of forensic science. Maybe after listening to yesterday's lunch, I should have titled this Murder by Standards. Then somebody might come and say, how do you do that? Or I could say, dead man found was sucking on standards. I don't know, that would really get people coming. But all in all, if we were to go into another venue, let's say National Football League, NFL, this particular panel would be talking about qualifications of the referees. Not a big draw. How about NASCAR? This particular panel, we'd be talking about the flags and the pit stop requirements. Again, not a big draw. Okay, so what do we have when we're developing standards? And as I'm losing the time here, okay, so there's my NFL. One bad pass interference called during Monday Night Football, or a questionable black flag at the Brickyard, and suddenly rules and referees are all anyone can talk about, at least for 2 days. That's because mistakes can change everything, and suddenly turning a deserving winner into a loser. Branding some other incompetent official as the national idiot of the day. It's tough making a misstep in front of 40 million TV viewers, but imagine making this misstep in front of the courtroom. Almost from the day that Edmond Locard established the first police crime lab in 1910, everyone thought forensic science was the rage. In those early years, think of 1910, in those early years, there was very limited supply of forensic scientists. And there's a limited supply of laboratories that could do the work. There's such a shortage that people actually came to NIST, I know, go figure, which back then was the National Bureau of Standards. In fact, one of the forensic scientists of the time, Wilmer Sauter, was a Bureau employee. And in his lab, it served as the country's first forensic crime lab from 1913 until the FBI opened their laboratory 11 years later. Wilmer Sauter and NBS at that time made headlines with their involvement in hundreds of criminal investigations, including the Lindbergh baby case, in which Sauter's expertise in handwriting analysis helped to win the conviction of the chief suspect, Bruno Hauptmann. The work of such early pioneers established a tradition that lasted for more than half a century, the tradition of the forensic scientist as the wizard of the courtroom, able to wow the judges and juries with expert analytical results. Then in the 1980s, either defense attorneys started getting smarter, okay, or society started watching more TV, I say yes, that suddenly we were being peppered with challenges to the validity of our results. In response, the hot topics in criminal justice circles became accreditation and certification. Then came Daubert and OJ, and a string of revelations within our own ranks. Many crime laboratory directors have been begging for years for adequate funding to fix the very problems that were now in the headlines. In September 2004, they got it when Attorney General John Ashcroft announced the allocation of close to $1 billion for forensic science. As everyone expected, accreditation and certification or measurable movement toward these goals soon became a requirement for laboratories wanting a share of the money. Accreditation and certification are all about demonstrating that our work practices and results meet standards of professionalism, accuracy, and consistency established by both the scientific and criminal justice communities. In fact, standards are the basis of accreditation and certification, not just in forensic science, but in the scientific and non-scientific disciplines. There are two types of standards. Now, my office, the Office of Law Enforcement Standards, we have technical standards that are referenced in SOPs and that enable not just forensic investigators, but practitioners throughout the community and the criminal justice public safety to do their jobs with confidence. These are minimum performance standards for critical equipment, everything from body armor, metal detectors, pepper spray, to breath alcohol devices, CBRNE personal protection equipment, and bomb disposal and search and rescue robots. The second standards are our physical standards, the controls and standard samples that accreditation requires laboratories to use for calibrating equipment, instrumentation, and measurement values. These are famous NIST reference materials, materials with characteristics and values certified by a technically valid procedure and traceable to a NIST certificate or other documentation. In the areas of forensic science, NIST has developed a number of interesting and very useful reference materials. You're probably familiar with many of them. As you see, they touch on the basics: drug and alcohol detection, glass refraction, arson, ballistics, DNA. Many of these are specific kind of references materials, and they have a special title called a standard reference material, or SRM. An SRM meets all the requirements of a reference material, and in addition, its stringent NIST certification criteria is issued with a certificate of analysis that details its characteristics and provides information on its appropriate uses. A NIST SRM is the gold standard of reference materials. Wasn't that nice how that just blended right in there? So proud when it actually works. Not all the time. Standards play a major role today in our accreditation and certification and in validating the results of forensics analyses. And the role is bound to expand, of course, as new forensic tools and procedures come online. Yet most people in our field have only a slight idea what it takes to make a standard reference material. So the basis of my talk is going to be educating you and taking you through what actually it takes to create a standard reference material. In particular, let's pick one. Let's look at the NIST SRM 8240, the standard bullet. To begin with, NIST only develops SRMs by request. So the 1,300 standards that are in our catalog at NIST got there because people requested them, they showed that there was a need for them, and more than just one or two people needing it. There had to be an actual basis for the creation of the standard. It was in the 1930s that forensic investigators developed techniques for comparing tool marks on bullets and casings and determining if specific bullets came from the same firearm, relying on comparative microscopes, patience, and considerable skill. In the 1990s, development of digital imaging and high technology speed computer networks raised the possibility of automating the process and enabling fire examiners to compare hundreds of bullets and casings fairly rapidly, including bullets and casings from other laboratories. ATF and FBI each raced to develop its own system for storing optical images and analyzing and comparing them. Unfortunately, the two systems were completely incompatible. Darn. In 1997, the two organizations came to NIST. They asked, is there any way that we can combine these two systems and make them compatible or interoperable? It didn't take long for the NIST scientists to look at it and say, sorry, no way. You have to pick one or the other. Well, of those of you who've heard about what transpired in the next few minutes with this discussion, it took Attorney General Janet Reno to step in and select one of the systems. Wow. Anyway, one system was selected, and it was decided that ATF's ballistic imaging system, which uses IBIS equipment, would be used to create the NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information System. The problem was you had all those images in the other system that had to be recaptured and put into the system, which took some time. Oh, such work. So they actually looked at it, started creating that particular database, and then around the same time, oh my God, Daubert showed up. And it didn't take firearms examiners long to realize that, with digital imaging in its infancy and the merging of the two systems getting underway, it was only a matter of time before some defense attorneys would start asking interesting questions, such as there is a possibility that the optical images that you have, the one from NIBIN and the other one that you've collected on the scene, were inaccurate, poorly captured, wrongly stored. What's the chance? The problem is that the only calibration protocol available was from the manufacturer. Let's see. There might be a vested interest in that. So, interesting enough, a visionary from ATF Firearms, anybody knows Robert Thompson? Would you call him a visionary? Don't tell him I said that. But anyway, he wrote that question in a letter to the NIST asking for assistance. We need some way of determining, is there a way we can have a standard reference material in this? Thompson's idea caught on, and in 1997, the criminal justice community formally approached NIST to develop such a reference material. NIST's first step, we wanted to do the bullet. Research what's required, what's out there, what does it need to be an actual standard bullet. Next, market. How many things out there that might be consistent with this option? And how exact do you need it? If you only need it to be measured to 2 decimal points, do we actually have to do a standard that's out to 4? So then we do process for market research. Better or worse, it's a business. In NIST, if we create a standard, it has to be shown that the sale of that standard is enough to recoup the cost that went into building the standard. So you might wonder sometimes as to why there's a larger price tag on one item than the other, and it depends on how much research was involved to develop it. So if there's a big enough pool for potential buyers, you got it, it's golden. For the bullet, we were lucky that the National Institute of Justice saw this as a direct need and provided a lot of the necessary funds. So that curtailed the market right there, and we moved forward with it. We ended up with a prototype. All right, technically, scientifically, a handful of organizations in the world with facilities and in-house expertise to develop and manufacture a standard bullet. So we had to link up with another division called the Precision Engineering Division, which really looked into how to create the standard bullet. In 1998, ATF, FBI, each fired master bullets. There's actually 5 master bullets being shot out of her gun, but it didn't make it onto this particular slide here. So we selected 3 from FBI, 3 from ATF, and using those characteristics, the Precision Engineering Division used a state-of-the-art instrument, the TallySurf 120L, to trace the contour of the master bullets, and then put it on actual forms, etching those exact lands into these blank forms. Here are the prototypes that we used. The first one is the master. Next one was what we came up with as trying to show how the lands would go. And the second one, we detailed them a little better. Each of the lands are different, so each land represents a firing from one of those 6 test fires. Each prototype bullet had 6 lands, as I mentioned, and then NIST and ATF tests compared the bullet signatures, looked at what the signatures on the master bullet were with these particulars, and the comparisons, as you can see, between the 2 standard prototypes. The evolution of the project. The original master bullet is on the left, the generation of the prototypes in the middle, and then our final standard is on the right-hand side. Now, we had a slight difficulty in that we made it too good. It was too shiny so that when we actually took it to a workshop with firearms examiners, they found that it was blowing out the light source, so they couldn't even capture the land. So we had to devise a way to kind of mute it down. So the bullets have now been distributed to ATF, FBI, and to the actual Forensic Technologies Corporation that makes IBIS for use to create images that can be used computerized to match with the actual item. Plus, we retain 1 actual standard bullet, measuring it and comparing it continually to make sure that it retains its properties. In addition, the SRM is available for purchase. And my thought is, if I can't get enough people buying this off of the catalog, there you go. I probably can make millions, but it might be scary as to who's actually buying them. So we've done similar standards development for bullet casings. The technical challenges are somewhat different. Casings will be coming up next. And then it took 8 long years of planning, research, and meticulous effort to develop the standard bullet. That's just to give you an idea of the length of time that it would create a standard. So if you have a standard you need today, you're going to be 8 years or so waiting for that particular standard. So I advise you, I look forward to hearing any information that you might have on where standards should be going. Hopefully we can get it started in plenty of time so that when 8 years or 6 or whatever it is, you still have a need for it. Thank you.